This is a public hearing to consider input for House Bill 4012, which is entitled Amending the Definition of Medical Services so as to exclude abortion. This bill has been passed out of the Health Committee and assigned to the Judiciary Committee for review and consideration. Let me just make it clear now, our staff has not had a full opportunity to review the bill and make any changes that we feel are necessary, so we will not be taking up the bill in Judiciary Committee today, but in all likelihood sometime later this week. We do post our agendas usually the night before by between 5 and 6 o'clock, so please pay attention to the posted agenda as to when the bill will be considered. There are copies of the bill on the front table if you need to receive a copy. I would ask that you keep in mind that this proceeding is streamed live, so please keep that in mind when you make your comments. We ask that you refrain from making any personal attacks or comments, and also that you refrain from any type of signs of approval or disapproval from the floor. We have a large number of people that have asked to provide input to our committee, and we're limited on time, so please, if you would observe those. We will probably allow, since we have over 50 people signed up to speak and are limited to an hour for our hearing, we'll ask you to keep your comments to a minute. The red light will come on after 45 seconds. If you will, please wrap up your comments when you see the red light come on. If you continue beyond that period of time, we do have snipers in the balcony that will be sure that your remarks are shortened appropriately. What we're going to do is we're going to call one person to speak, and then I'll indicate who the next person up will be. If you are that next person up, if you'd please move toward the front, perhaps in one of these 3 or 4 chairs that are there, so that you're close to the podium. When the speaker that precedes you completes his or her remarks, you'll be prepared to move forward. Once again, please keep your remarks within the time allotted, otherwise you're infringing on other people's time. We're going to try to alternate as best we can between those who have signed up in favor of and those who signed up in opposed, although the number that have signed up as opposed to the bill quite outnumbers the others, so we'll probably have 3 or 4 in a row that are in opposed and then one in favor. If you have written materials that you'd like for the committee to consider, if you would please give them to the gentleman to my left or the lady to my right, and they'll be sure that they are circulated among our committee members. If you're able to, if you could remain after the hearing is completed, there may be members of the Judiciary Committee who have questions they wish to ask you. I will apologize in advance if I have mispronounced your name, especially if it's not written very properly, but I'll do the best I can. So, our first speakers will be Frank Hartman, and he will be followed by Dr. Andrew Martin. Mr. Hartman, would you come forward, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Frank Hartman, and I represent the West Virginia section of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And both the leadership and the entire legislative committee of the West Virginia section of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists strongly urge you to oppose House Bill 4012 under consideration in your committee. West Virginia ACOG represents the more than 225 obstetricians and gynecologists in the Mountain State who have dedicated their careers and lives to providing health care to West Virginia's women and securing healthy futures for their families. House Bill 4012 seeks to amend the definition of medical services to exclude abortion, and West Virginia ACOG is firmly against this effort for numerous important reasons. All women must have access to the best available health care that they need, and every woman should have access to health care that covers a full range of reproductive health services without additional administrative or financial burden. This includes when they become pregnant, where they decide to continue their pregnancy or terminate that pregnancy. Low-income women or women who rely on public insurance programs should not be treated any differently. Mr. Chairman, we have a longer letter that time does not allow. If I may just submit that for your consideration.
Can you give it to the clerk, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Dr. Andrew Martin, followed by Barbara Steinke, and I believe Ms. Steinke has ceded her time to Margaret Chapman Pomponio. So, Ms. Chapman, Ms. Pomponio, you'll have 2 minutes. Dr. Martin, please proceed.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Martin, Andrew Martin, an obstetrics and gynecology resident at Marshall University. I've always lived in West Virginia, and I've completed all of my training here. I did my undergraduate, my medical school, and will soon finish my residency at Marshall. I'm currently also the Junior Fellow Chair of the West Virginia section of ACOG. I've been practicing medicine as a resident since 2015. One necessity for me to practice medicine is that I can provide the best care for my patients, no matter what insurance they have. There have been multiple occasions that I've had to induce a miscarriage or a premature birth in order to save the life of the mother or protect the life of the infant. This is an unnecessary bill that will result in confusion as to what patients it's okay to perform necessary medical procedures on based on insurance. We have to be conscious that most of the patients in West Virginia are hardworking citizens that aren't wealthy and rely on government assistance. We should not discriminate against these patients based on what insurance they have. I love this state, and I'm currently looking for where I'm going to practice after I complete my residency. However, legislative interference and me being able to do my job will make it difficult for me to stay in my home state of West Virginia. For these and so many other reasons, I urge rejection of this bad legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Ms. Pomponio, and she will be followed by Father Brian Crenwedge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Margaret Chapman Pomponio, Executive Director of West Virginia Free, and here we are, another year, another abortion bill. We're here today because, again, hardline politicians are bent on taking away health care from women. This time, they're picking on the poorest women in our state, which translates to some of the poorest women in the nation, as we know. West Virginia has Medicaid coverage of abortion due to a 1993 Supreme Court decision where the court found that if the state Medicaid program covers reproductive health care, that it must provide the full range. That includes maternity services, including prenatal care and family planning, including birth control and abortion. That decision is in keeping with the values of everyday West Virginians. I was born and raised in this great state, and I know those values. I know that we are a compassionate, kind, and generous people. Enactment of this mean-spirited bill would be devastating to women, babies, and families. It could mean that our sole remaining abortion clinic goes out of business. What then? I shudder to think. If the clinic can manage to stay open, what will it mean for a poor woman who relies on Medicaid? She'll have to forgo paying rent and utilities to get the care that she needs. What happens if she has kids already, as so many women do? And to those who claim that there are nonprofits out there with $400,000 lying around to cover these costs, that is simply untrue. Let's say this effort succeeds and the state ends up forcing a woman to become a mother when it is against her wishes or her best interests. What cost will that be to the mother, the child, the state, and society? Amid a ravaging opioid epidemic, this bill is absolutely kicking poor women and families when they're already down. I think I'm about to wrap up here. I would just appeal to the moderates in this body to please think through what this means for the individual women. I know I'm not going to convince hardliners here, but for the moderates, please think through what this will really do to West Virginia women and families. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Pomponio. Father Brian, I hope I got this right. Crenwedge?
Perfect, Crenwedge.
Crenwedge. Thank you. Followed by Joseph Cohen.
Thank you and good morning. I don't come here today to impose my religious beliefs on you, but I am here to speak of our moral duty as human persons, our common morality, which concerns our ability to distinguish right from wrong, regardless of our religious beliefs. Abortion violates the natural law written in our hearts to do good and avoid evil by abusing the inherent human rights of the unborn child. We desperately need to change the Medicaid policy to stop funding abortions in West Virginia. Therefore, the Catholic Conference of West Virginia supports the policy of the federal government and of many states that limits the cases in which tax dollars can be used to pay for abortion. In the case of Medicaid, West Virginia's policy is much more open to funding abortions than that of 32 states and the District of Columbia. It is high time West Virginia's policy joined that of the majority of states. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. Joseph Cohen, followed by Betty Rivard.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Joseph Cohen. I am the Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of West Virginia. I'm very sorry we are once again here today for a public hearing regarding yet another piece of legislation which aims to interfere with a woman's right to self-determination. There's a well-worn path being tread on the carpet in this chamber from the seats to this microphone due to the yearly assault on women's right to choose. And the target of this legislation always seems to be those women with the least voice under this dome. Last year it was adolescents, and this year it is poor women. For you see, this bill only impacts poor and working class women. It has no effect on rich women. Under HB 4012, only poor and working class women have their access to abortion services curtailed. Only poor and working class women would be forced to beg in order to be able to exercise their fundamental right to terminate a pregnancy. And only poor and working class women have the very dignity of their basic bodily autonomy questioned. The bill is part of an ongoing war against working people in this state coming from this legislature. If you care about poor and working people, you cannot vote for this bill. Just as much as any vote on PEIA or SNAP, this bill will answer that question: which side are you on? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Betty Rivard, followed by Chantel Fields.
I'm Betty Rivard, a citizen advocate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I want to make 3 points in opposition to this bill. 1, abortion is an essential part of medical services. Wording in this bill defies common sense. 2, the Judiciary Committee needs to perform its role to ensure that laws are legally correct and constitutional. 3, despite our strong beliefs from different points of view, we need to find a way to work together to prevent unwanted pregnancies, including education and safety net services for children and families. This is not just a women's issue. It goes beyond politics. It involves every one of us and how we care for each other in our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rivard. Chantel Fields, followed by Julie Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Chantel Fields. I'm the Executive Director of West Virginians for Affordable Health Care. The mission of my organization is to bring a consumer voice to public policy so that every West Virginian has quality, affordable health care. West Virginians for Affordable Health Care supports and access to a full range of health care services for women. We believe that women's health should include reproductive health services such as regular gynecological exams, contraceptive services, prenatal and maternity care, adoption services, and abortion services. Access to these health care services should be available to all women, including low-income women who rely on Medicaid for their health care. The amount of money a woman has should not prevent her from accessing health care. Currently, more than 150 West Virginia women ages 18 to 64 are dependent on Medicaid for their reproductive health care. HB 4012 would deny these women access to certain reproductive health services simply because they are poor. We believe that decisions regarding reproductive health and abortion should be made by women in consultation with their medical providers and their families. We urge you to oppose 4012 and believe that politicians should not take health coverage away from poor women by banning abortion coverage in Medicaid. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Julie Pratt, followed by Matt Kesterson.
Good morning. I'm Julie Pratt, and I live in Charleston. I've worked on behalf of West Virginia children and families for more than 20 years, first in state government and now with nonprofit organizations. Again and again, I've seen how access to a full range of health services is essential to family well-being. I am so proud of our state for implementing programs like CHIP and Medicaid expansion, which have extended coverage to many thousands of previously uninsured people. I also applaud our Department of Health and Human Resources for the many initiatives they sponsor to promote physical, mental, oral, and reproductive health for all West Virginians. House Bill 4012 goes against the grain of who we are as people, who have been working for decades to extend health care access to all our citizens. All families need and deserve a full range of reproductive services, including abortion. This bill singles out and discriminates against the state's most vulnerable women and violates our values and our Constitution. It also diverts the legislature's precious time away from other pressing problems, like the opioid crisis. I urge you from the bottom of my heart to oppose this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Pratt. Matt Kesterson, followed by Julie Archer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Kesterson, and I'm a college student at West Virginia University. I'm here to discuss the sanctity of life and how we should defend it. All right? I come from a successful adoption case from Bulgaria, the poorest country in Europe at the time. It is my duty to defend the unborn and orphans everywhere, okay? If a blessing like this can happen to me in the poorest country, this blessing can happen to so many people in the most prosperous nation in the world. I seriously don't know what it's like to be a pregnant woman. I bet it's very scary, especially if you can't afford it. But I do know that I was given a chance, and these babies should too. This is really important, not just to me, but to the unborn. To finish off, it is our duty to defend the sanctity of life, not just as American constituents, but as already born human beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kesterson. Julie Archer, followed by Eli Baumwell.
Good morning. My name is Julie Archer, and I'm here today on behalf of the League of Women Voters of West Virginia. The League of Women Voters opposes measures that would limit women's access to comprehensive health care and supports the inclusion of reproductive health care, including abortion, in any health care package. The League believes that everyone should have access to a basic level of care and that the ability to pay should not be a consideration in allocation of health care resources. When a woman in West Virginia is enrolled in the state's Medicaid health insurance program, all of her reproductive health services should be covered, including annual checkups, prenatal and maternity care, family planning services, including birth control, and abortion. West Virginia women should be able to make all of their reproductive decisions, including the decision to have an abortion, with dignity and respect, without lawmakers interfering by banning coverage in violation of their constitutional rights. The West Virginia legislature and members of this committee should be focused on other issues, such as addressing the opioid crisis, providing better pay for our teachers and state employees, and supporting policies that encourage job creation and healthy families, instead of playing politics with women's health care and imposing more economic hardship on low-income women and their families. Please oppose House Bill 4012. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Archer. Eli Baumwell, followed by Angela Cavender.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. My name is Eli Baumwell. I'm the Policy Director with the American Civil Liberties Union of West Virginia. The ACLU is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we're dedicated to protecting and expanding the rights guaranteed by the constitutions of the United States and of West Virginia. Much of our work inherently focuses on communities and individuals that have not been able to enjoy the full rights and protections enshrined in those documents. One of those rights is abortion. And let's be clear, abortion is a right. Abortion is a right. The Supreme Court of West Virginia has repeatedly found it to be a right. The Supreme Court of the United States has repeatedly found it to be a right. Courts have grappled with the moral, emotional, religious, and scientific issues that are associated with abortion, and they have repeatedly found that it is a right. Now, despite this, we find ourselves in familiar territory. It's another legislative session, and so we gather for what seems to be the annual ritual of considering legislation aimed at curtailing this right. And once again, because this body cannot outright prohibit a right, we chip away at the margins. And people in the margins are the ones who suffer. This year, it's people in the economic margins that we are attacking. Now, the erosion of basic rights is always concerning, but when it's targeted at marginalized groups, it's particularly insidious. At a fundamental level, we are saying that people who already enjoy some privilege can exercise their rights, and those who are at a disadvantage cannot. And I can think of a few things that are more unfair and frankly un-American than this concept. And that's the same conclusion that the Supreme Court of West Virginia came to when they ruled that if Medicaid is going to be available to people who are going to carry pregnancy to term, then it has to be available to people who want to terminate that pregnancy.
Now, I know in this body there are people who may hold personal objections to abortion, but who understand that it's a right. I know there are people who do not want to pick on the disadvantaged, and I know that there are people who understand fundamental fairness. And I know there are people who understand that West Virginia has more pressing needs. So I call on those people to have the courage to stand up and stop attacking the rights of our most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baumwell. Angela Cavender, followed by Marquita Hutchins.
I'm Angela Cavender. I'm a nurse, and I've worked in the women's health care arena. So I've seen firsthand how pregnancy has physical, emotional, and economic consequences. Women find themselves as pawns in this political game, where there are those who want to impose their personal or religious interpretations on abortion for all. House Bill 4012 will restrict our most vulnerable women's access to health care and her right to act on her own health decisions. I stand with these West Virginia women and their right to have access and funds for abortion and for all women's health care. If we are serious about decreasing abortion, then we will have family-friendly policies that support access to health care, access to birth control, affordable child care, and a living wage. I ask you to oppose House Bill 4012.
Thank you, Ms. Cavender. Marquita Hutchins, followed by Louise Deal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Marquita Hutchins. I am from St. John's Episcopal Church here in Charleston. I ask legislators to oppose House Bill 4012. I'm a newcomer in your state. 3 years I have been here, and when I look around, it seems like West Virginia is in a downward spiral for maybe 2 decades, with unemployment, poor economy, education that is not necessarily up to par, opioid epidemic, and now health care for women. Legislators can help by providing re-education for those who have lost their jobs so that they can become employable again. They can create a climate in West Virginia so that businesses outside can look in and want to be a part of West Virginia. They can provide funding and education so that good-hearted, compassionate people who love children and love teaching can thrive in their professions. They can help the addicted with rehabilitation so that they can develop a self-esteem and self-worth. And they can help find ways to help the poor, to defeat hardline, what seems to be misanthropic legislation. They can provide health care, including full productive and abortion rights for women so that women can make decisions for their lives that help them to become more educated, to become energetic, enthusiastic, courageous, creative citizens of West Virginia. Help the young who don't want and can't care for a child at this moment in their lives. Help them, give them time to become educated, to become good citizens of West Virginia, to stay in West Virginia, to know that they can find good jobs and be productive in your state. West Virginia legislators, do not beat the poor into the ground, but build them up. And you can do this with good health care for good women. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchins. Louise Deal, followed by Elisa Clemens. And just a reminder, when you see the red light come on, please start wrapping up your comments because you're beginning to infringe on the remaining time we have for other speakers. Ms. Deal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Louise Deal from Morgantown, West Virginia, with the Monongalia County chapter of West Virginians for Life. And it seems to me the previous speakers have, in support of the bill, have been talking about health care. Well, the problem is abortion is not health care. And there was recently a poll released by West Virginia Free And the interpretation of the polling results is flawed and dishonest because they asked the general populace if they supported Medicaid insurance coverage for various services, including abortion. And from the wording of the question, most people would assume that these were abortions for medical reasons. However, that was not the case. And the problem is the argument that the abortion decision is between a woman and her doctor is simply not true. Abortion is not health care. There's much research, if you go digging, can show the harm it does to women. So I ask that you would support this bill that redefines abortions, because just because you can afford it doesn't mean you should do it. And it would actually be more harmful to the women. So I would ask that we limit Medicaid abortions to those that are intended to save the life of the mother. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deal. Elisa Clements, followed by Molly Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Elisa Clements, and I'm the Director of Public Affairs for Planned Parenthood South Atlantic. And I'm here this morning to speak against House Bill 4012. There is a near universal fundamental belief that in America, everybody should be able to live, work, and make decisions about their health with dignity and economic security. This belief is not limited to women who have private health insurance, but also applies to low-income women who get their health insurance through Medicaid. The belief that a woman's income should not affect her health coverage persists when the health service in question is abortion. We do not always know a woman's circumstances. We're not in her shoes. When Medicaid covers pregnancy care but withholds coverage for abortion, we're taking away a low-income woman's ability to make important decisions based on what is best for her circumstances. I urge you to not go forward with House Bill 4012.
Thank you, Ms. Clemens. Molly Kennedy, followed by Emily Thompson.
Hello, everyone. My name is Molly Kennedy, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for the ACLU of West Virginia. Through my work, I've been fortunate to meet and speak with people throughout the state, many of whom wished they could be here today to voice their strong opposition to House Bill 4012. They want to tell you that they wish you would spend your time on other issues rather than rehashing the same arguments about our right to obtain an abortion. That this bill does nothing to prevent unintended pregnancies. It only serves to create an environment in which poor women feel forced to seek unsafe, potentially life-threatening options. If you truly wanted to address the issue of abortion, we could work towards ensuring that every West Virginian has access to quality, comprehensive sex education and reproductive health care. They would express their disappointment in the lack of regard or compassion for cases of rape and incest in this discussion. That members of our legislature respect their rights so little that they would prevent them from exercising those rights, even in some of the most unimaginably painful situations a person could experience. They want you to know that they recognize this bill for what it is, a politically motivated attack on poor and working class people in this state, and a total disregard for the rights and bodily autonomy of West Virginians. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Emily Thompson, followed by Jeanette Rousey.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Thompson, and I'm with Planned Parenthood South Atlantic here in West Virginia. I'm here this morning to talk about how HB 4012 is a blatant attack on our health, families, and constitutional rights. A ban on Medicaid coverage for abortion targets low-income West Virginians and would harm women and families irreparably. It is a direct attack on our freedom to make our own decisions about deeply personal health care and our ability to care for ourselves based on what we know is best for our circumstances. Abortion saved my friend Rachel's life. She has an extremely rare genetic disorder, and when her and her husband got pregnant, the doctors told them that this disorder was passed on to the fetus. If she had not been able to get the abortion she needed, her blood pressure would have gone into stroke, and she wouldn't be here today. We are the only ones who know what is best for our lives, and 65% of West Virginians agree with us that this type of care should be covered by Medicaid. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Jeanette, I hope I got this right, Rousey, followed by Kelly Pritt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jeanette Rousey. I'm a citizen from Huntington, West Virginia. I come here as a mother, a grandmother, a child abuse prevention specialist, and most of all as a woman of faith. I take seriously my baptismal vow to fight evil, injustice, and oppression in whatever forms they present themselves, and to make it my calling as a volunteer and as a professional to build up women, children, and families and the most vulnerable among us. I know we all share a determination to prevent unwanted pregnancies. We share compassion for every human life. I believe House Bill 4012 does not represent a faith-driven response to a social crisis, but exercises magical thinking about its solution. We all wish for the best possible chance that every child conceived will not only be wanted, but that every pregnant woman will be healthy, informed, and prepared to deliver that child in the best and safest of circumstances. It's wishful thinking to assume that this is always the case. It is misguided, magical thinking to believe that we will achieve these outcomes by punitive measures, restricting options, punishing doctors, and forcing poor women in medical distress to risk their lives or wind up poorer and more desperate in the attempt to end a dangerous pregnancy. House Bill 4012 will not achieve the positive outcomes you wish for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rousey. Kelly Pritt, followed by Rosalie Earle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kelly Pritt. I am from Charleston, West Virginia, and I represent the Kanawha County chapter of West Virginians for Life. Nationally, the American public has been consistently opposed to paying for abortions with their tax dollars. In a recent mayor's poll, 60% of Americans oppose the use of their tax dollars to pay for abortions. When that's the question asked, even 40% of pro-choice respondents oppose funding abortions. In addition, 43% of Democrats and 60% of independents oppose taxpayer funding of abortion. Citizens do not want to pay for abortion with their tax dollars, even if they think the procedure should be illegal. In 1980, the Supreme Court ruled in Harris v. McRae that states cannot pass laws outlawing taxpayer funding of abortion. The case noted that Roe v. Wade had created a limitation on government, not government entitled under the Constitution. For example, we do not hear calls to use taxpayer funding for newspapers under the First Amendment or guns under the Second Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pritt. Rosalie Earle, followed by Jamie Lynn Crofts.
Hello, my name is Rosalie Earle. I live in Charleston. And I want to address comments made by Delegate Kayla Kessinger, sponsor of House Bill 4012, in the Sunday Gazette Mail yesterday. She said the bill would limit the amount of tax money spent on a procedure that many West Virginians have a moral and conscientious objection to. Well, first, how many is many? Likewise, many West Virginians believe poor women should have the same access to medical services as other women. Many West Virginians also have moral and conscientious objections to their tax money being spent on waging wars or encouraging gambling. Nevertheless, they are legal, as is abortion in West Virginia. Delegate Kessinger says women in West Virginia have many choices when it comes to pregnancy. Well, they don't. You're either pregnant or you're not. Pregnancy, it's not only an issue about whether women want to have a baby, it's also an issue about whether women want to be pregnant. Pregnancy and complications from childbirth can be very dangerous. Every day in the world, 830 women die from pregnancy or childbirth-related complications, according to a November CNN report. Obesity and high blood pressure, health issues affecting low-income women in West Virginia are risk factors for pregnancy and complications. If a woman doesn't want to take the health risks that a pregnancy brings, she must have a right to end that pregnancy. Poor women don't have that right if they don't have the financial means. House Bill 4012 does nothing but punish women for being poor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Earle. Jamie Lynn Crofts, followed by Sharon Lewis.
Good morning. I'm Jamie Lynn Crofts, the legal director for the ACLU of West Virginia. I'm also a woman who has been poor and unable to afford trips to the doctor, and I'm here to speak in opposition to HB 4012. Abortion is a constitutional right protected by both the federal and state constitutions. As the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals ruled 25 years ago, the state can't ban Medicaid coverage for abortion. It is simply unconstitutional. It is not up to the legislature to determine whether a particular woman needs an abortion. It is up to a woman and her doctor. In West Virginia, HB 4012 would declare to the world that in West Virginia, only people who have money can exercise their constitutional rights. The sponsors of this bill have said that its purpose is to stop women from having abortions. That is not only unconstitutional, it's immoral. Something people often forget is that restricting access to abortion doesn't restrict the demand for abortion. When women don't have access to safe abortions, they have unsafe abortions. Safe, legal, and accessible abortion quite literally saves women's lives. 60% of women who terminate a pregnancy are mothers already. HB 4012 would put the lives of those mothers and the future of their families in danger. But I'm a lawyer, not a doctor. For medical advice, ask ACOG, who also opposes this bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Crofts. Sharon Lewis, followed by Lori Cascio.
I'm Sharon Lewis, Executive Director, Women's Health Center of West Virginia. So now you've crafted HB 4012 to eliminate access to abortion care for Medicaid-insured women. That's called discrimination, plain and simple. At the same time, you rail against low-income recipients of SNAP, Medicaid, and other benefits for family support. Now you demand that women continue unintended pregnancies, deny them bodily integrity, to pander to the demands of right-wing anti-abortion extremists who also, by the way, oppose birth control. I understand that the official motto of the state of West Virginia is, "Mountaineers are always free." Apparently, your actions call for a modification. Perhaps it should read, "Mountaineers are always free unless you are a poor woman seeking safe, legal abortion care to end an unintended pregnancy." Denied access to safe, legal abortion care, many women will resort to self-abortion. When they become septic near death, then maybe it's medical care. Abortion is medical care. And can you say abortion wards? If you don't know what that is, maybe you need to check history because that's where you're sending these poor women. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Lori Cascio, followed by Katie Quinenos, and I hope I got that right.
Thank you. I'm Lori Cascio, the Students for Life of America representative for West Virginia, and I'm here on behalf of the hundreds, if not thousands, of students across our country who are in school today and couldn't be here, so I'm here for them. I recently, a couple years ago, actually moved to West Virginia from Virginia, and my neighbors always joke that West Virginia is the best Virginia. And you know what? I can agree with them. West Virginia is not only beautiful, it's family-focused, and most of all, it's pro-life. And I am so blessed to be here because I know how much abortion can hurt women. I have various friends who have had abortions. One who had an abortion on January 17th many years ago, and every year she suffers on that day and remembers her child and just cries, takes off work, and I don't want that for anyone. I have family members who have gone through very difficult situations. A friend of mine was raped, and she had her child, and my family took her into her home and cared for her and adopted her baby and helped her get onto her feet. So I know people in difficult situations, there is hope for them, and I don't want abortion for anyone because abortion is not health care. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cascio. Katie Quinones.
My name is Katie Quinones. I have lived in West Virginia for the past 16 years. I work here in Charleston. I'm the development director at the Women's Health Center of West Virginia. I strongly oppose HB 4012. Women should not have to live in a world in which they lack access to the essential reproductive health care that is abortion. They should not be forced to carry pregnancies to term and give birth to children that they cannot afford simply because our legislators want to play politics with the health of West Virginia women. HB 4012 will devastate women and families in West Virginia. Simply put, it will ruin lives. I want my legislators focused on policies that actually help people, not take away reproductive health care from those who are most vulnerable in our community. Regardless of how any of us feel about abortion, politicians should not be allowed to take away a woman's health care just because she is a poor person. Abortion is a right. Abortion is health care. Please oppose HB 4012. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie Lynn Crofts, followed by Caitlin Cook. Oh, okay. Caitlin Cook, followed by Rosemary Winland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Caitlin Cook, and I'm with the West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy. Health insurance is intended to help people cover both unintended and unexpected health costs. Yet, we're gathered here today because a bill has been introduced, House Bill 4012, which singles out abortion by taking away coverage under Medicaid. Restrictions on health insurance for abortion would have negative impacts on low-income women and their families, including higher out-of-pocket costs, increased stress, delays in access to abortion care, or outright not access to abortion care. An unexpected cost, such as an abortion, forces many women to choose between paying for that care or paying basic expenses such as food, rent, and other needs. When we put delays in these costs, studies have also shown that a woman who seeks an abortion but is unable to access one is more likely to fall into poverty than one who gets an abortion. Everyone has a human right to health, which includes a right to reproductive and sexual health, and being able to access the care they need when and where they need it. Taking away Medicaid coverage for an abortion will inflict harm on West Virginia women and interfere with their families' decisions. I urge you to oppose House Bill 4012. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Rosemary Winland, followed by Valerie Woody.
Thank you. My name is Rosemary Winland, and I had an abortion. I had a fetus who suffered a polyploidy. It had an abundance of extra genetic material. Therefore, it was pretty big and very malformed. For whatever reason, my body did not spontaneously abort, as is typically the case in these situations. I carried the child to about 20 weeks before the condition was illuminated to me, and an abortion was recommended at that time for emotional reasons. It was considered compassionate. I was glad for that opportunity. I was a young student on a medical card, and my medical card paid for my abortion at the time. I had prepared remarks, but only having a minute, I just wanted to give you one personal story that illustrates why access is so important. Women need to make their own decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Winland. Valerie Woody, followed by Stacy Kay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. So, first of all, my name is Valerie Woody. I am the outreach coordinator for the West Virginia Citizen Action Group. I'm on the board of Kanawha Valley National Organization for Women, and I'm the assistant director of West Virginia Transgender Resources. So, many people have spoken about taxation, going to things that they find morally repugnant. We could talk about other issues which some of us find morally repugnant that our tax dollars go towards, like politically motivated programs that fund research into clean coal. A vegan could oppose the serving of meat in this cafeteria in this building. Folks could be opposed to Medicaid-assisted opioid treatment or vaccination or psychiatric medicine entirely. But this is an issue of bodily autonomy, of civil rights. In this state, we're not forced to donate blood or kidneys to save the lives of those that we even love, even our family members, because we respect the right to bodily autonomy. We respect the right of people to determine what happens with their own body. This body, should it choose to restrict that right based on income or wealth, will be restricting a basic civil right, and I find that morally repugnant. Please oppose HB 4012.
Thank you, Ms. Woody. Stacy Kay, followed by Sadie Shields.
Good morning, I'm Stacy Kay. I live in Kanawha County. I'd like to read the Women's Law Center Law Center statement on abortion coverage bans. Access to reproductive health care, including abortion, helps to ensure that a woman can make the important decision of whether and when to have children that is best for her and her family. Yet, accessing reproductive health care can be costly, making insurance coverage critical for women who are seeking an abortion. Without coverage of abortion, many women are forced to forego care, threatening both their physical and economic health. When a woman is denied coverage of abortion, she faces threats to her health, whether it's a delay in seeking care due to lack of financial means or the inability to afford seeing a licensed quality health care provider and having to make other riskier arrangements instead. When a woman is denied coverage of abortion, she may be forced to choose between basic necessities such as paying rent and utilities and obtaining needed care. When a woman is denied coverage of abortion, she may face long-term consequences, including being pushed deeper into poverty. One study found that a woman who is unable to get an abortion is more likely to be living in poverty and be unemployed 1 year later than a woman who received the abortion care she needed. Studies have also shown that when political interference restricts Medicaid coverage of abortion, it forces 1 in 4 lower-income women seeking an abortion to carry an unwanted pregnancy to term. When it comes to the decision of whether to become a parent, it is vital that a woman is able to consider all of the options available to her, however little money she makes, however she is insured, or wherever she lives. I hope our legislators can recognize this and continue to ensure that a woman has insurance coverage that meets her needs, including abortion. Please uphold our state's Supreme Court decision. Vote no on House Bill 4012.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. Sadie Shields, followed by Heather Hill.
I am a student at Davis and Elkins College, and I would like to thank Kayla for pushing this bill forward. As a native to West Virginia and a tax-paying citizen, it breaks my heart to know my money is being put towards funding abortions. I would like to speak on behalf of my best friend and her family who have been greatly affected by abortion. Before her father married her mother, he was in a relationship with another woman. From that relationship, she became pregnant and without the consent of the father had an abortion. Today, my best friend misses her sister and her father is an alcoholic. This has led to a divorce and broken family. By providing abortions, we are allowing this to happen, and I would not wish that upon anyone. I would also like to add that it breaks my heart to hear women discuss killing the child in their womb as a good and liberating thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shields. Heather Hill, followed by Sam Hickman.
Hi, I'm Heather Hill. I'm a resident of Charleston, West Virginia. And in the 80s, I left Charleston, moved to DC, and I feel like I've worked around this whole issue because I worked with special needs, parental placement, international, and domestic adoptions. My biological father was adopted and he's pro-choice. And I also was a pregnancy loss coordinator for the hospital for 7 years, working with stillborn and newborn death and running that support group. The majority of the women I work with now, however, are women that have unintended pregnancies. My youngest client being 11, who was raped by a 40-year-old man. And then I see numerous impoverished women who mainly are funded by Medicaid. These women are continuing the cycle of poverty in this state. And it's going to be more harmful to them, their families, their health, if Medicaid's taken away for them. They don't have access to education. The 11-year-old client I had was at 11 higher educated than her parents, and her dream is to drive a coal truck. None of these options will be presented to these women if this is stripped of them. And I think we need to look at the bigger picture and have compassion and try to put ourselves in their shoes and get our state out of the poverty and look at other methods and not trying to take away a woman's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Sam Hickman, followed by Bryn Pomponio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Sam Hickman. Excuse me. I'm Executive Director of the West Virginia chapter of the National Association of Social Workers, and I'm here today to ask you to oppose House Bill 4012. Self-determination, it's the highest ideal of my profession, and incidentally, it's the highest ideal of our society and of those who consider themselves to be conservative. On another bill in the body across the hallway, Senator Rucker noted the Bill of Rights states that everyone has a right to feel secure in their person. Mr. Chairman, the right to self-determination does not stop at a random bill number. The Judiciary Committee and the members of this legislature should stand up for the rights of all women, and yes, even poor women. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickman. Bryn Pomponio, followed by Andrew Schneider.
My name is Bryn Pomponio, and I'm from Charleston, West Virginia. I work with low-income individuals and see directly the importance of comprehensive health care for them. Our Constitution in Article 3, Section 3 provides that our government is for the common benefit, and that includes providing comprehensive health care for low-income women. I urge you not to pass this bill that deprives women who are in the most need of full health care.
Thank you, Mr. Pomponio. Andrew Schneider, followed by Marianne Buchanan.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Schneider, and I come here as a lifelong civil rights advocate. It seems pretty clear to me that House Bill 4012 discriminates against low-income women by denying them access to a legal health care procedure, the legal health care procedure of abortion. Once the state undertakes funding of medical care for the poor, as it does with Medicaid, it cannot subject the recipients to discriminatory treatment. This was the reasoning by which our state Supreme Court struck down a similar law only 25 years ago. In the Penapinto case, the Chief Justice wrote, similar constitutional issues would arise if the legislature, as a population control measure, for example, funded abortions but refused to provide comparable medical care for poor women who choose childbirth. And what few people, excuse me, I have a cold, what few want to admit is that the struggle over the right to choose abortion is in large part a struggle over whether the religious beliefs of some should be codified into law and imposed on others who do not share those beliefs. Our nation and West Virginia is made up of a multitude of diverse religions, many of which have differing views on when life begins. Catholics believe that life begins at conception. Protestants, many of them believe that life begins at some point during the gestation period. And I can say as a Jew, we believe that life doesn't begin until you graduate from medical school. So the point is that given the diversity by which our country and our state is made up with, is it really fair for us to impose religious doctrines and turn it into force of law? Please oppose House Bill 4012.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Mary Ann Buchanan, followed by Caitlin Gaffin.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Mary Ann Buchanan, the Program Director for West Virginians for Life. In 1993, the Panapinto decision was issued. It ordered that West Virginia must pay for medically necessary abortions. The Department of Health subsequently issued rules that Medicaid recipients would be eligible for taxpayer-funded abortions. Since 1977, the Department of Health and Human Resources has provided for 34,876 taxpayer-funded abortions. The cost to West Virginia taxpayers has been $9,518,660. That's nearly $10 million. In the last 5 years, the numbers of abortions in West Virginia have nearly tripled from 502 in 2013 to 1,560 in 2017. In West Virginia, there have been a large number of new Medicaid patients added to the rolls due to changes in our health care associated with Obamacare. It is likely due to these increases that medicated abortion procedures have increased. State Medicaid recipients are no longer the poorest people in our state, but instead many include middle-income families who receive their insured medical care through Medicaid. State Medicaid pays for all abortions, not just those that would prevent the death of the mother. It is time for the legislature to redefine the way that Medicaid abortions are funded. The No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion bill will define abortions eligible for Medicaid funding as only those required to save the life of the mother. That is, those that are truly medically necessary. This reestablishes the intent of the court decision. Please support HB 4012.
Thank you, Ms. Buchanan. Caitlin Gaffin, followed by Stacy Kay.
My name is Caitlin Gaffin. I'm a West Virginia native. As the great-great-great-granddaughter of Devil Lance Hatfield, my family has been proud to call West Virginia home for over 200 years. I was born in Logan, went to school in Boone County, and I now currently reside in Charleston. I'm here today to speak in opposition of HB 4012. 4 years ago, I had an abortion. I was a grad student, working part-time, and I had just moved back to West Virginia to help care for a family member after spending many years away. I was on Medicaid. In fact, it was the first time in my adult life that I had insurance coverage. I cannot stress enough how incredibly grateful I am that my decision of whether or not I wished to become a parent did not end up being dependent upon the amount of money I had in my checking account. Taking away abortion coverage under Medicaid, as HB 4012 aims to do, would not only serve to jeopardize the health and economic security of West Virginia's poorest and most vulnerable women. In a recent Hart poll, West Virginia voters overwhelmingly support the state's Medicaid program providing coverage for the full range of reproductive health care, including abortion. Almost 70% of West Virginia voters also believe that regardless of how one feels about abortion, politicians should not be allowed to deny a woman health coverage for abortion just because she is poor. But that is exactly what HB 4012 would do, deny a woman health coverage for abortion just because she is poor. This bill does not change the legal status of abortion as health care, which seems to be the only point of argument from those who spoke in favor of the bill today. This bill would only single out West Virginia's poorest women and families, threatening their health and economic security. The amount of money a woman has or doesn't have should not prevent her from being able to have an abortion. West Virginia women and families deserve better. Please vote no on HB 4012.
Thank you, Ms. Gaffin. I see Stacy Kay's name is on here twice, so I'll move on. John Doyle, followed by Gary Zuckett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm John Doyle, and I'm here representing West Virginia Free and the National Association of Social Workers. Boiled down to its essence, House Bill 4012 says that it's okay to have an abortion if you're wealthy, but not if you're poor. I believe that to be both unfair and illogical, and therefore wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Gary Zuckett, followed by Julie Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Gary Zuckett. I'm Executive Director of West Virginia Citizen Action, and Citizen Action is a proud member of the Healthcare Not Politics Coalition that opposes 4012. A lot have been said about the Supreme Court, 1993 Supreme Court decision, but just one quote there from Justice Workman. She said that the law they threw out constitutes a discriminatory funding scheme which violates an indigent women's constitutional rights. I would propose that this bill before us does the exact same thing. This bill is also opposed by the West Virginia section of the American College of Obstetricians, which say funding restrictions only serve to impede access to safe abortion care, and that this bill would impose profound hardships for some of the most vulnerable West Virginia women who already face significant barriers to accessing the health care. So what's the goal here? Is the goal to have legislators force their religious views on all the women in the state? And if that's the case, what's next? You can't really legislate morality. I think that this whole situation, we should keep this very personal. This is a decision between a woman, her doctor, and her God.
Thank you, Mr. Zuckett. Julie Warden, followed by Pam Stanley.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Julie Warden, and I am the Communications Director for West Virginia Free. I reside in Jackson County with my husband and my 3-year-old little girl. I'm here today to ask for rejection of House Bill 4012. Through my work at West Virginia Free, I've answered many phone calls from women all over the state facing unintended pregnancies for a variety of reasons who are seeking resources. One story has always stuck with me. It was a woman calling to ask if she could cause a self-induced abortion by drinking turpentine. My heart broke. This woman felt that she had so few options, she was willing to take measures into her own hands. It was an eye-opening experience for me because as a privileged white woman, I had never looked at abortion from this viewpoint. HB 4012 targets poor women. It points out a specific class and it tells them that they can't have the same healthcare options as other women because she can't afford it. It's not my place to decide for someone else whether or not they should get an abortion, and I don't think it's anyone else's either. Please leave healthcare decisions where they belong, in privacy, without judgment, but with dignity. As I'm sure many women in this room on both sides of this bill have had an abortion, whether they are still of maternal age or not, I think they would appreciate the respect to have that decision. West Virginians want jobs and healthy families. Please focus on legislation that supports the great people of our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Warden. Pam Stanley, followed by Sheila Barajas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Pam Stanley. I'm the Executive Director of West Virginians for Life. A group of researchers asked the question, what is the effect on American women of having an abortion as compared to giving birth to the fetus? To answer the question, they obtained the complete data from the Medicaid records of California. This state comprises approximately 10% of the population in the United States, and researchers made the use of the entire population of the Medi-Cal system. The researchers concluded that women who had Medi-Cal-funded abortions had significantly higher number of subsequent claims for health care than women who had given birth. 21% more claims for adjustment reaction, 95% more claims for bipolar disorder, 40% more claims for neurotic depression, 97% more claims for schizophrenia. The increase in claims to the California Medicaid system because women chose to have an abortion instead of choosing life for their child are astronomical. These claims represent a huge increase in the cost to taxpayers of California as a result of the Medicaid-funded abortions. West Virginia taxpayers do not want to repeat the mistake. Please support HB 4012. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stanley. Sheila Barajas, followed by Sierra Pennington.
Preventing the use of Medicaid coverage for abortion is incredibly harmful to poor women. It can interfere with women's personal medical decisions and undermine their autonomy by putting care out of financial reach. Delay women from obtaining abortion care while they search for the financial resources to pay for an abortion out of pocket, which is concerning as delays increase the costs and potential health risk of a later abortion. It forces women and their families to endure financial hardships to afford care, such as forgoing food or schooling, taking out payday or other loans, delaying bills or rent, putting large amounts on credit cards, and pawning belongings. Puts women's health and well-being at risk when they go without food, shelter, or other necessities in order to put money towards an abortion, and force 1 in 4 women who qualify for Medicaid to continue unintended pregnancies, which are associated with poorer maternal and child health outcomes compared to planned pregnancies. Protect West Virginia women and families. Vote no on HB 4012. And abortion is health care.
Thank you, Ms. Barajas. Sierra Pennington, followed by Anduin Williams.
Hi, thank you, Chairman. I'm reading a testimony by Rachel Barnes, a voter in North Central West Virginia. It's kind of long, so I'm going to cut it out a little bit. The news is grim. You, the sobbing wife and not-to-be mother, will be able to try again soon, they say. The good news is you have insurance gold standard through your husband's job. The procedure can be done in the hospital. They check your blood pressure. It is dangerously high. Things move fast now. The hurry up and wait is done as you are wheeled into the procedure room. You half remember what happened the next day. You had a seizure, they say. Infections can do that with fever. The nurse tries to make you comfortable, but all you feel is the space in your womb empty and ache in your heart. Your husband smiles, taking your hand in his, and with tears in his eyes, says, "You are here, that is all that matters." Now imagine there wasn't any insurance, no privilege of job security waiting, good medical staff, covered birth control, paid sick time. What would have happened to me? I have asked doctors plainly about this over the years after they found out I had a genetic condition that would prevent me from having a successful pregnancy. Put simply, I would be dead. The contributions I have given science from the studying of the mutations in my DNA would not exist. Yes, life is everything, but so is the life of the person carrying the child. Please don't rip this coverage away from the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pennington. Anduin Williams, followed by Cheryl Barajas.
Hi, my name is Anduin Williams, and I live in Charleston. I am deeply concerned about the fact that when we're talking about reproductive health care, we're talking about cost. This is the only time and the only situation when I think of health care that cost is mentioned to the state instead of actual lives. So with that being said, I would like to take a moment and talk about the lives of women and what happens to them 1 year after an abortion versus ones that don't. I'm going to read to you from the Turnaway study. It is the largest longitudinal study that follows 2 sets of people. One set, a group that was turned away from having an abortion. The second set, the group had the abortion. Here we go. Most of the women who were denied an abortion, 86%, were still caring for their child. 11%, only 11% had an adoption. Also, a year later, they were far more likely to be on public assistance. 76% of those turned away were on public assistance, as opposed to 44% of those who got abortions. 67% of the turnaways were below the poverty line versus 56% of the women who got abortions, and only 48% had a full-time job versus 58% of those who got abortion. So for those that continue to talk about health care in terms of finance, I say this: when a woman is denied the abortion she wants, she is statistically more likely to wind up unemployed, on public assistance, and below the poverty line. Another conclusion we could draw is that denying women abortion places more burden on the state because of their new mothers' increased reliance on public assistance programs. With that being
Thank you, Ms. Williams. And if you want to provide the committee with a summary of the study, please provide it to the clerk. Cheryl Barajas, followed by Amanda Schwartz.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm here as a mother of 5, a grandmother of several more, and a former shoeless holler girl from West Virginia who still lives here, who also forgets to put on her glasses. Taking away Medicare coverage of abortion will impact the well-being of West Virginia women and families, those who were already living at or near poverty. Research shows that such restrictions can lead to emotional, financial, and physical harms, including poor emotional well-being, physical health impairments, intimate partner violence, and poverty. Also, restrictions that impede access to abortion interfere with women's autonomy, which can have harmful consequences for women's life plans and their economic futures. When Medicaid coverage for abortion is available, women have a clearer understanding of how to access the care they need and are at less risk for going into debt and needing to take extreme measures to pay for care. Medicaid coverage for abortion also helps prevent harms to women's health and well-being and ensures women can implement private medical decisions with dignity and without delays. Protect West Virginia women and their families. Vote no on HB 4012. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barajas. Amanda Schwartz, followed by Karen Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 4012 is not about morality or protecting taxpayer money. This bill's sole purpose is to score political points with religious conservatives in West Virginia by passing a measure that devalues poor women's health care, despite the fact that it's abundantly clear that West Virginia voters do not support politicians interceding in reproductive health care. As I'm sure you've already heard, a survey by Heart Research Associates, a nonpartisan and nationally respected group, found that nearly 2 out of 3 West Virginia voters support the state's Medicaid program covering the full range of reproductive health care services, including abortion. Like many West Virginians, I come from coal miners, and I know from their stories that in the old days, so many families were taken advantage of by coal companies. Our heritage is rooted in strife and struggle for the lower socioeconomic classes, and I thought we'd risen above that, but I stand here today to see that the same power dynamic is playing out. It is wrong and unworthy of West Virginians to use poor women as political pawns for individual gain, and I hope that you are able to see that. Vote no on HB 4012. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. Karen Cross, followed by Jody Knuckles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Abortion is not health care, and it does not benefit women. Abortion has lifelong consequences, both mentally and physically, for those of us who've made these decisions. The federal legislation, the federal law that restricts funding of abortion, the Hyde Amendment, is attributed to saving 2 million people. 2 million people are alive today because of that law. In the past few years, or the last year we know about, there were 1,500, more than that, abortions paid for in the state of West Virginia. I believe House Bill 4012 will save lives. And as a volunteer at a homeless shelter, I meet children who are bright and beautiful. And how dare we say she should die simply because of her financial status? I urge you to support House Bill 4012. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cross. Judy Knuckles, followed by Josh Gaffin.
Thank you. My name is Judy Knuckles, and I've been a resident of the state of West Virginia for over 60 years. Today, I'm not speaking for myself, but I'm reading a statement from Maggie McCabe because she could not be here this morning. In McCabe's words, Members of the committee, I oppose House Bill 4012. As a result of an abortion as a young woman in 1972, my mother, Jane Mason McCabe's goal was to establish a facility in West Virginia capable of rendering approved medically necessary or elective procedures for low-income women. Therefore, the Women's Health Center of West Virginia was born. Today, this facility renders care to a multitude of women of all ages, needs, and incomes. A large part of the care provided is for Medicaid recipients because, as we know, West Virginia women are poor. Some of the reasons that you should oppose or kill this bill is it is detrimental to low-income women who need the approved abortion services due to a variety of reasons. Some simply do not want children at this time, mental deficiency, heroin addiction, other drug addiction, rape, incest, and other health illness such as type 1 diabetes. In closing, please keep this bill off of the agenda for the House of Delegates for the reasons mentioned above. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Knuckles. Josh Gaffin, followed by Paul Epstein.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm just a citizen of our great state. House Bill 4012 would take away Medicaid coverage for abortion, or in other words, deny a woman certain health coverage just because she is poor. For a state with the highest share of its population enrolled in Medicare, that's nearly 1 in 3 guys, the loss of Medicare coverage for abortion would be catastrophic. Studies show that a woman who wants to get an abortion but is denied is 3 times more likely to fall into poverty than someone who would get an abortion. Right now, nearly 1 in 5 West Virginians already find themselves living below the federal poverty line. Can we really afford to gamble for more? West Virginia is responsible for producing some of the brightest and most talented minds, but we are not able to retain them if we continue passing such regressive legislation. The only other state with a similar adoption as 4012 is South Dakota, a place that every young person is just itching to move to. I'm urging you, do not let 4012 pass. Let's continue making West Virginia a place to be proud of, a place where young people want to live, a place that protects and supports all West Virginia women and families, no matter how much money they do or don't have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gaffin. Paul Epstein, followed by Jennifer Irene K. Rouse.
I'm speaking to oppose the bill. Something like 1 in 4 women in their lifetimes, in their childbearing lifetimes, will seek an abortion. That's not going to change. And the bill, as I understand it, will keep women who are poor and need an abortion from having their insurance, their Medicaid insurance, pay for it. Therefore, they'll be seeking other ways, or it will make them poorer still. It was interesting. I thought that the representative of Right for Life found a study in California that gave all kinds of said that all kinds of it cost more, and that there were mental health issues. I thought maybe I could look that up real quickly and find that study, which I couldn't find because when I entered, California study shows more costs and more problems from abortions. I got all kinds of results like this. Major complication rate from abortion is extremely low. California study finds abortion complications very rare. Abortion clinics not harmful to mental health. Abortion is not harmful to mental health, etc. Please oppose this bill.
The final speaker today is Jennifer Irene K. Rouse, I think it is.
Good morning. Thank you very much. My name is Jennifer Caruso, and I have been serving the great state of West Virginia in public health avenues and medical education since 2001. And I'm here to thank the state of West Virginia for providing economically challenged women this health care coverage since 1993. Women of childbearing age during their lifetime, which is conservatively 30 years of their lifetime is childbearing age. That is 360 months of their lives where they must actively choose to plan a family or not, and successfully execute the birth control plan within those 360 months. 360 months leaves a big window for minor miscalculations and errors. Have any of you ever miscalculated anything by just a few days? Forgot to pay a bill, forgot to get your car inspected, any number of reasons. Nonetheless, women in West Virginia have persevered, and I have to edit here, but I just want to close with, what would our workforce look like if we prioritize basic preventive health care services, built up our public health infrastructure? With a health and safe workforce, we have a more diverse, larger tax pool. Younger people will stay here in West Virginia and continue to grow our state. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Carews. And on behalf of the committee, we thank all of you who have provided input today. As I indicated, the staff of the Judiciary Committee is in the process of analyzing the bill that came from the Health Committee. We are not prepared to present the bill at this time, but it will probably be on our agenda within the next week, if not the end of this week. We will post that agenda for the public to see at least the evening before. So if you have interest in the bill, which you obviously do, please pay attention to the agenda as it is posted. To the members of the committee, we'll convene in 5 minutes. So please, we've got a full agenda today. Please go to the Judiciary Committee meeting room. Thank you for your attendance. We are adjourned.